Bullies dared black homeless girl to sing a talent show. Her voice made the principal cry. She wore simple clothes that were always a little worn, her shoes showing the marks of long walks in the rain and cold nights. She never complained, never asked for special treatment, and always carried herself with a quiet dignity that not many people noticed. Life had not been kind to Jasmine. Her family had faced many hardships over the years. Her mother had passed away when she was very young, leaving her father to take care of her and her younger brother, Malik. Her father tried his best, but after losing his job during an economic downturn, the family struggled to pay rent. Eventually, they had no choice but to move from place to place, living in temporary shelters and staying with friends when they could. Despite the challenges at home, Jasmine was determined to keep going to school. She believed education was the key to a better future, and she refused to let her circumstances define her. Each morning, she would wake up before the sun, help Malik get ready, and quietly make her way to school, often arriving with her clothes wrinkled and her hair messy from the long walk. No one knew the struggles she faced behind the walls of the shelters, and Jasmine kept it that way. She didn't want pity, she wanted normalcy, even if it was hard to find. At school, Jasmine was known as the quiet girl who rarely spoke unless spoken to. She never joined clubs or sports teams, partly because she was shy and partly because she often had to help Malik and make sure their small home was in order. Her classmates, especially some of the popular students, saw her as an easy target. They labeled her homeless behind her back, using her situation as a way to make fun of her. They didn't know Jasmine's heart, nor did they know the talents she hid away from everyone. Jasmine had a secret, something that no one at school could have guessed. When she was alone, she sang. She sang when she thought no one was listening, in the shower, in the small corners of shelters where she could find some privacy, even when Malik was sleeping. Her voice was unlike anything people expected. It was rich, clear, and filled with emotion. Singing made her forget about the cold nights and empty stomachs. It gave her hope and a sense of freedom she rarely felt in the real world. She had learned to sing from her mother, who used to sing lullabies that made her feel safe and loved. Those songs were all Jasmine had left of her mother, and she carried them with her everywhere she went. Singing became her way of connecting with her mother, even though she was gone. It was also her way of expressing the feelings she could not put into words, the sadness, the fear, the longing for a better life, and the joy she sometimes found in small moments. Despite her talent, Jasmine never dared to show her voice to anyone at school. She knew the students who bullied her would use it to mock her. They had no understanding of what she had been through or the strength it took to keep going every day. The fear of humiliation was strong, but so was her love for music. Singing was her safe place, her secret world where she could be herself. School days were a mix of challenges and small victories. Jasmine sat quietly in class, always listening, always learning. She had a natural intelligence that her teachers noticed. She paid attention to details, remembered facts easily, and had a way of thinking that was thoughtful and mature beyond her years. Her teachers sometimes called on her, and when she answered, she spoke with confidence, her words carefully chosen. But outside the classroom, she kept a low profile, avoiding the gossip and cruel jokes that echoed in the hallways. Her friends were few, but the ones she had were loyal. There was Sarah, a classmate who had been kind to Jasmine from the first day she arrived at Westwood High. Sarah never asked questions about Jasmine's home life. She simply treated her with respect and kindness. Then there was Mr. Lewis, her music teacher, who had noticed Jasmine humming softly to herself in the hallways. He had seen something special in her voice and often encouraged her in gentle ways without putting her on the spot. Still, the bullies were always present. They whispered insults, laughed behind her back, and sometimes tried to humiliate her in front of others. Jasmine had learned to ignore them, to smile politely when necessary, and to keep walking without showing that their words hurt her. Inside, however, the pain lingered. Being labeled homeless in front of her peers made her feel like an outsider in a place where she should have felt safe. But Jasmine had learned something important through all this. She could not control what others thought or said about her, but she could control her response. At home, life was difficult but filled with moments of love. Malik looked up to Jasmine in ways that warmed her heart. She became both sister and mother to him, guiding him, comforting him when he was scared, and encouraging him to keep studying and dreaming. Even in shelters, Jasmine found ways to create a sense of home. She would help organize their small space, cook simple meals, and find little joys to share with Malik. They laughed together at small jokes, told each other stories, and sometimes sang together, creating moments of happiness despite their circumstances. One of Jasmine's favorite things was visiting the local library. It became her refuge from the noise of the shelters and the harshness of the world outside. She would spend hours reading about music, famous singers, and people who had overcome difficult circumstances. She learned new songs, practiced silently in corners, and imagined herself performing on big stages, her voice reaching people who needed to hear it. These dreams kept her going, gave her strength to face each day, and reminded her that she was more than her circumstances. Even with all her hardships, Jasmine had a spark of hope that never faded. She believed that one day someone would recognize her talent and she would have a chance to share her voice with the world. She often imagined walking onto a stage, singing freely, and seeing faces light up with surprise and admiration. That dream was fragile, but it was hers, and she clung to it with every bit of strength she had. At school, she carefully avoided the attention of the bullies, but she could feel their eyes sometimes, judging her every move. They saw her as different, easy to make fun of, and weak. What they didn't know was that Jasmine had a courage they could never understand. Every day she faced challenges that most people could not imagine, and she did it with grace. She learned to rise above cruelty, to find joy in small victories, and to protect her spirit from the negativity around her. Despite her struggles, Jasmine also had a quiet sense of pride. She had learned to take care of herself, to help her brother, and to keep going even when life seemed unfair. She knew the value of hard work, the importance of kindness, and the strength of perseverance. Her experiences had made her wise beyond her years and taught her lessons that no classroom could ever provide. And through it all, music was her constant companion. Singing was not just a hobby, it was a lifeline. Each note she sang carried her dreams, her pain, and her love for life. It reminded her that no matter how difficult life became, she had something precious inside her that no one could take away: her voice. Her voice was her courage, her secret, and one day, she hoped, it would show the world who Jasmine really was. Little did she know, that day was closer than she ever imagined. One event, one moment was about to change everything. It would challenge the bullies, amaze her teachers, and touch the hearts of everyone who heard her sing. But for now, Jasmine continued her daily routine, quiet, unnoticed, but filled with dreams that burned brighter than the hardships around her. Every morning she woke up, prepared Malik for school, and made her way to Westwood High, carrying her invisible crown of courage, ready to face another day with a heart full of hope and a song that had yet to be heard. The school year at Westwood High was moving quickly, and the excitement of the annual talent show was starting to fill the air. Posters were hung on the walls, announcements were made over the loudspeakers, and students whispered about who would perform this year. For most students, it was a time of fun and anticipation, a chance to show off their skills or enjoy the performances of their friends. But for Jasmine, it felt like a storm was approaching. The bullies who often tormented her had discovered that the talent show was coming up, and immediately they began plotting. They saw Jasmine as the perfect target. "She'll never be able to sing in front of the whole school," one of them said with a laugh. "Everyone will see what a joke she is." They smirked, imagining the whispers, the laughter, and the embarrassment that would follow. Jasmine overheard some of their whispers in the hallways. Her stomach twisted and her heart raced. She wanted to disappear, to shrink into the floorboards so no one would notice her. But at the same time, there was a tiny spark inside her, a part of her that remembered the comfort music had given her in the darkest nights. It whispered, maybe, just maybe, this is a chance. At home, Jasmine kept her worries to herself. She didn't want Malik to feel afraid or anxious. She helped him with his homework, cooked the small meals they could manage, and tried to create a sense of normalcy. But she couldn't ignore the thought of the talent show. Every time she thought about the stage, the lights, the audience, and the bullies waiting to humiliate her, she felt a mix of fear and curiosity. Her best friend, Sarah, noticed her unease. "Jasmine," Sarah said one afternoon during lunch, "you're going to do amazing things. Don't let them scare you." Jasmine smiled weakly, grateful for the support. Sarah didn't try to pressure her. She just reminded Jasmine of the strength she already had inside her. The day the bullies approached Jasmine was one she would never forget. They cornered her near the lockers, their sneers loud enough for nearby students to hear. "Hey, Jasmine," one said, "we dare you to perform in the talent show. Go on, show everyone you're a special talent." Their words dripped with mockery. Another laughed, "Yeah. Let's see if the homeless girl can sing." Jasmine froze. Her mind raced. She wanted to run away, to tell them no, to disappear. But then she remembered all the nights she had spent singing alone, all the times music had comforted her when everything else seemed lost. She realized that this was a choice she had to make. Let them control her, or take a step forward and show the world what she could do. For days, Jasmine wrestled with her fear. She practiced in secret, hiding in the small bathroom of the shelter or behind closed doors in the library. Her voice trembled at first, unsure and soft, but with each practice it grew stronger and more confident. She experimented with songs her mother used to sing, melodies she had learned from books, and tunes she had imagined herself. Every note carried her feelings, the fear, the sadness, the hope, and the quiet courage she had nurtured over the years. At school, the whispers about her dare grew louder. Some students were curious, others were cruel, and a few were quietly rooting for her, even if they didn't show it openly. Jasmine noticed the change in the atmosphere. The hallways seemed charged with anticipation, and every step she took felt heavier. She felt the eyes of the bullies on her constantly, their laughter lingering in the air. Despite the fear, Jasmine began to feel a strange excitement. She realized that if she sang, she would not just face the bullies. She would also have a chance to reclaim her story, to show the world that she was not defined by her circumstances. She began to imagine walking onto the stage, standing tall, and letting her voice fill the room. The thought of the audience listening, not laughing but truly hearing her, gave her courage she didn't know she had. Her music teacher, Mr. Lewis, noticed the change in her. One afternoon, he found her humming softly in the empty music room. "Jasmine," he said gently, "I can see you're practicing something. Do you want to talk about it?" Jasmine hesitated, but then nodded. She told him about the dare, the bullies, and her fear of being humiliated. Mr. Lewis listened carefully, his eyes kind. "Jasmine," he said, "sometimes fear tells us to hide, but courage is what helps us sing even when everyone is watching. You have a gift, and the world deserves to hear it. But the choice is always yours." His words struck Jasmine deeply. She realized that this was not just about the bullies or the dare. It was about her own voice, her own story. Over the next few days, Jasmine practiced more than ever. She experimented with breathing techniques, pitch, and tone. She focused on expressing emotion through her voice, making sure each note carried a piece of her heart. She even wrote down thoughts and feelings that she wanted to convey through the song. Music became her anchor, her way of calming the storm of fear and anxiety that had been building inside her. Meanwhile, the bullies continued to boast about the dare. They spread rumors that Jasmine would fail, that she would embarrass herself, and that the talent show would be the highlight of her humiliation. Some students began to whisper to each other, wondering if she would actually perform. A few even felt guilty, realizing that the dare was cruel and unfair, but they stayed silent, unsure of what to do. As the talent show approached, Jasmine felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. The night before the show, she could barely sleep. She lay on the small cot in the shelter, thinking about the stage, the lights, and the audience. She imagined the bullies' laughter, but she also imagined the faces of those who would be surprised and moved by her voice. She realized that no matter what happened, she had already taken the first step by preparing herself, by refusing to let fear control her completely. The morning of the talent show, Jasmine went through her usual routine, helping Malik, packing their small bag and putting on the clothes she had chosen carefully. She tried to appear calm, but her hands shook slightly. She practiced a few notes quietly as they walked to the bus stop, each note strengthening her resolve. Malik, sensing her nervousness, squeezed her hand and said, "You'll be amazing, Jasmine." His faith in her gave her courage she hadn't realized she needed. At school, the auditorium buzzed with energy. Students filled the seats, chatting excitedly, waiting for the performances to begin. Jasmine could hear the laughter of the bullies nearby, and a tight knot formed in her stomach. She took a deep breath, remembering Mr. Lewis' words and the countless hours she had spent practicing. She reminded herself that this moment was not about them, it was about her. Backstage, Jasmine peeked out at the audience. The lights were bright, and the room was filled with students, teachers, and parents. Her heart pounded, but she felt a strange calmness as well. She knew that once she started singing, all her fear would transform into something powerful. The music had always been her friend, and now it was her ally in the face of fear. As she waited for her turn, she thought about everything that had brought her here. The nights in shelters, the struggles at home, the support of Sarah and Mr. Lewis, and the tiny spark of hope that had never died. She realized that this moment was bigger than a dare, bigger than the bullies, and bigger than the fear inside her. It was her chance to step into her own story, to show herself and the world that she was strong, talented, and unbreakable. The curtains were about to open. Jasmine could hear the applause for the previous performers, the laughter and chatter, and the occasional whispers about her. She closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and whispered a silent promise to herself. No matter what happens, I will sing with all my heart. When her name was called, Jasmine walked onto the stage. Every step felt heavy, but each one was filled with determination. She stood in front of the microphone, the bright lights shining down, and looked out at the audience. The bullies were watching, smirking, confident that they would see her fail. But Jasmine took a deep breath, felt the music inside her, and prepared to share her voice with the world. In that moment, everything else disappeared, her fear, the whispers, the judgment. All that mattered was the music, the song, and the courage she had gathered over a lifetime. She lifted her head, opened her mouth, and let her voice flow. As Jasmine stood on the stage, her hands gripping the microphone tightly, she felt a rush of emotions. Fear, nervousness, anticipation, and even a spark of excitement all collided inside her. Her heart pounded loudly in her chest, and for a moment she wondered if she could really do it. The bright lights above her felt blinding, the audience stretching out into what seemed like an endless sea of faces. Some faces looked curious, some skeptical, and some, she could see, were already whispering to their friends. The bullies were sitting near the front, smirking confidently. They expected to see her falter, to trip over her words or sing off-key, and then laugh at her embarrassment. Their smug expressions made Jasmine's stomach twist, but instead of making her shrink back, it fueled a quiet determination. This was not about proving them wrong. It was about proving to herself that she could rise above fear and doubt. She took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. She remembered all the nights she had spent practicing in the shelter, the moments she had sung quietly in the library, and the lullabies her mother used to sing. Each memory filled her with warmth, courage, and a sense of purpose. She could feel her heart beating in rhythm with the song she had prepared, the melody that had been growing in her mind for weeks. The music began softly from the speakers. Jasmine opened her mouth and let her voice flow. The first note was gentle, almost fragile, but perfectly clear. It filled the auditorium, and a hush fell over the audience. Students stopped talking, teachers leaned forward in their seats, and even the parents turned their attention fully toward the stage. The song was not loud or flashy. It was full of emotion, honesty, and raw beauty. As Jasmine continued, her confidence grew. She sang with every ounce of feeling she had, pouring her struggles, her hopes, and her dreams into each note. Her voice carried the pain of sleepless nights, the weight of responsibilities she had shouldered, and the quiet joy she found in small moments with her brother. Every word was a testament to her strength and resilience. The bullies' smirks began to fade. They had expected to see a timid girl falter, but what they heard instead was extraordinary. Jasmine's voice was pure and powerful, moving effortlessly through high notes and soft whispers alike. It was impossible to ignore, and the room seemed to vibrate with the beauty of her performance. Even those who had doubted her talent could not look away. Teachers exchanged glances, clearly impressed. Mr. Lewis, her music teacher, watched from the side with tears welling in his eyes. He had known she was talented, but seeing her courage in front of a full auditorium filled him with pride and emotion. He could see every note carrying her story, every pause reflecting her heart, and he knew that this performance would leave a lasting mark on everyone present. Students in the audience were beginning to whisper among themselves, but these whispers were no longer mocking. They were filled with awe and admiration. "Wow, she's amazing," one student said softly. "I had no idea she could sing like that." Others nodded, their expressions showing surprise and respect. The energy in the room shifted completely, from curiosity and skepticism to wonder and admiration. As the song progressed, Jasmine lost herself in the music. She forgot about the bullies, the lights, the audience, and even the microphone in front of her. It was just her and the song, her voice carrying the depth of her life experiences. Each note was deliberate, yet effortless, expressing emotions that words alone could never capture. Some students felt goosebumps, some had tears in their eyes, and many simply sat in silence, mesmerized. Jasmine's eyes scanned the room briefly and landed on the principal. She could see his expression changing as he listened, his brows furrowed, his lips quivering slightly, and then a single tear rolled down his cheek. For the first time in a long time, Jasmine realized the full power of her voice. She wasn't just singing notes. She was telling her story, sharing her heart, and reaching people in a way that transcended fear and labels. The bullies were frozen. They had no words, no reaction. Their plan to humiliate her had completely backfired. Instead of embarrassment, they had witnessed something remarkable. Jasmine's courage, talent, and authenticity had silenced them, and for the first time they were forced to see her as more than a target for cruelty. They had underestimated her, and now they could only watch in stunned silence. As the final notes of the song approached, Jasmine poured everything she had left into them. Her voice rose and fell with emotion, powerful yet gentle, commanding yet tender. She hit the last note perfectly, letting it linger in the air for a few seconds, giving everyone a moment to absorb what they had just heard. Then she took a deep breath and stood still, waiting for the audience's reaction. For a heartbeat, there was complete silence. No one moved, no one spoke. It was as if the entire auditorium was holding its breath, suspended in awe. Then the applause began. At first it was hesitant, polite, but quickly it grew louder, until the room was filled with cheers, clapping, and shouting. Students jumped to their feet, teachers joined in, and even some parents wiped tears from their eyes as they celebrated the performance. The principal rose from his seat, walking toward the stage with tears in his eyes. He extended a hand to Jasmine and said, "That was incredible. I've never seen anything like it in all my years at this school. You have an amazing gift, and we are so proud of you." Jasmine felt a wave of relief and joy wash over her. The fear, anxiety, and doubt that had filled her just moments ago melted away, replaced by pride and a sense of achievement she had never felt before. Her best friend Sarah ran up to her, hugging her tightly. "I knew you could do it," she whispered. Jasmine smiled through her tears, feeling the warmth of friendship and support. Even Malik, who had come with their father to watch, looked up at her with admiration and pride, his eyes shining with happiness. The bullies slunk away, their heads lowered. They had hoped to humiliate Jasmine, but instead they had witnessed a moment of pure talent and courage. For the first time, they had no words, no power over her. Jasmine had not just sung a song, she had shown the world who she really was. After the applause settled, Mr. Lewis came backstage, clapping and smiling. "Jasmine," he said softly, "you've done something amazing tonight, not just with your voice, but with your courage. You faced fear and you turned it into beauty. That is rare, and it is extraordinary." Jasmine felt a deep sense of gratitude. All the practice, all the fear, and all the struggles had led to this moment. She realized that music had given her a voice not only in song, but in life. The rest of the evening was filled with praise and admiration. Students approached her to say how moved they were, teachers congratulated her on her courage, and parents expressed their amazement at the depth of her talent. Jasmine felt like she was walking on clouds, her heart full of joy and pride. She had faced her fears and transformed a moment meant for humiliation into a triumph of talent and spirit. That night, when Jasmine returned to the shelter, she could hardly sleep. She replayed every moment of the performance in her mind, the applause, the tears, and the expressions of amazement on the faces of the audience. She felt proud, not just for the recognition, but for herself. She had faced fear head-on, stood tall, and let her voice be heard. The next day at school, the atmosphere had completely changed. The whispers about her being homeless had vanished. Instead, students talked about her voice, her courage, and the way she had owned the stage. Even the bullies seemed subdued, unsure of how to respond to the admiration Jasmine now received. Teachers treated her with a newfound respect, and Mr. Lewis continued to mentor her, helping her refine her skills and encouraging her to pursue her talent further. Jasmine realized something important that day. She could not control what others thought or said about her, but she could control her actions and her response to fear. She had turned a moment of potential humiliation into a triumph that would stay with her forever. Music had given her strength, courage, and a way to tell her story without words. The principal, inspired by Jasmine's performance, arranged for her to meet with local music teachers who could provide further guidance and opportunities. Her voice had touched not only the school community, but also the broader community beyond Westwood High. Invitations for performances began to arrive, and people wanted to hear her sing again, to witness the talent and courage she had shown. Through it all, Jasmine remained humble. She remembered her struggles, her family, and the nights she had spent singing alone. She knew that every challenge she had faced had shaped her into the person she was that night, a strong, courageous young woman with a voice that could move hearts. She felt gratitude for the support of those who believed in her, like Sarah, Mr. Lewis and her family, and she knew that her journey was only beginning. The talent show had been more than a performance. It had been a turning point. It had transformed fear into courage, doubt into confidence, and whispers of cruelty into applause of admiration. Jasmine had faced the bullies, faced her fears, and emerged victorious. And as she left the stage that night, she knew one thing for certain. Nothing could ever silence her voice again. After the talent show, Jasmine felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Her body was tired from the performance, her nerves had been stretched to the limit, but her heart was light, filled with a joy she had never known before. Walking back home that evening, she replayed the events in her mind. The applause, the tears of the principal, the awe in the eyes of her classmates, and the quiet surprise on the faces of the bullies. For the first time, she realized the full power of her voice and the strength she carried within herself. At the shelter, Jasmine and Malik sat together in the small common room. Malik was bursting with excitement. "Jasmine, everyone at school is talking about you." "You were amazing," he exclaimed, his eyes shining with pride. Jasmine smiled, ruffling his hair. She had always been his protector, but tonight he had become her supporter, and his words reminded her of why she had faced her fears in the first place. The next morning at school, the atmosphere had changed completely. The usual whispers and cruel jokes about Jasmine's home life were gone. In their place were conversations filled with admiration and respect. Students approached her in the hallways, smiling, congratulating her, and asking her about her performance. Teachers, too, spoke to her with warmth and encouragement. Even the principal, who had watched her perform with tears in his eyes, walked up to her and said, "Jasmine, you have an incredible gift. We are proud of you, and we want to support you in every way possible." The bullies, who had dared her to perform, were noticeably quiet. They had expected her to embarrass herself, to give them an opportunity to mock her in front of everyone. Instead, they had witnessed something extraordinary. For the first time, they were forced to acknowledge that their cruelty could never define someone else's talent or courage. They avoided her gaze in the hallways, unsure of what to say, and gradually, the power they thought they held over her began to fade. Word of Jasmine's performance began to spread beyond the school. Parents who had attended the show shared stories with friends. Some teachers posted about it in community newsletters, and soon, local newspapers and online forums were discussing her story. They focused not only on her incredible voice, but also on her courage, determination, and resilience. Jasmine, who had once felt invisible, was suddenly recognized as someone remarkable, a young woman whose talent and heart had touched many. Her music teacher, Mr. Lewis, continued to mentor her. He provided her with opportunities to learn more about vocal techniques, performance skills, and music theory. They spent hours after school working on songs, exploring different styles, and perfecting the nuances of her voice. With every lesson, Jasmine grew more confident, not just as a singer, but as a young woman who believed in her own potential. Mr. Lewis encouraged her to audition for local competitions and community performances, explaining that her talent deserved to be shared with the world. The principal also took steps to support her further. He arranged for her to meet with community leaders, local musicians, and sponsors who could help provide opportunities and resources for her to continue developing her talent. For the first time in her life, Jasmine felt that doors were opening for her, doors that had always seemed closed because of her circumstances. She realized that her courage on that stage had been the key to unlocking a future she had only dreamed of. At home, life began to shift in small but meaningful ways. The recognition she received at school and in the community boosted her confidence, which in turn made daily life easier to manage. She felt proud of herself in a way she never had before. Malik looked up to her with admiration, inspired by her courage and success. Their bond grew stronger, and together they began to imagine a future filled with more stability, happiness, and hope. The talent show also brought unexpected changes to her relationships at school. Students who had once ignored her or whispered behind her back began to treat her with respect. Some became friends, curious to know more about the girl whose voice had captivated everyone. Jasmine, who had always been careful about whom she trusted, remained cautious, but she began to feel a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. She realized that courage and authenticity could attract genuine connections and friendship. Her story also inspired many other students. Teachers noticed that students who had been shy or insecure were starting to participate more in class, take risks, and explore their own talents. Jasmine's example showed that it was possible to rise above fear, face challenges, and share one's gifts with the world. She became an unspoken role model, not because she wanted attention, but because her courage and talent had naturally inspired others. As weeks passed, Jasmine was invited to perform at local events, community centers, and small concerts. Each time, she felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement, but the memory of that first performance at Westwood High gave her strength. She learned how to manage her nerves, connect with her audience, and pour her emotions into every performance. Each applause, each smile, each word of encouragement reinforced the belief that she was capable of achieving great things. Her family's life began to improve as well. The recognition and opportunities opened doors that had once seemed impossible. Through community programs and local sponsorships, Jasmine's father found stable employment, and they were able to move into a more permanent home. The fear of losing shelter or not having enough to eat gradually disappeared, replaced by hope and stability. Jasmine's courage on stage had not only transformed her own life, but had also brought a brighter future for her family. Even the Bullies began to change, though slowly. They could no longer use her home situation as a weapon, and they realized that their actions could never diminish her spirit. Some of them approached her later, awkwardly apologizing for their past behavior. Jasmine, who had always been kind and understanding, accepted their apologies without bitterness. She understood that their cruelty had come from ignorance and insecurity, and she had no reason to hold grudges. Instead, she focused on the positive changes in her life and the opportunities ahead. Over time, Jasmine began to dream even bigger. She imagined performing on larger stages, recording her own music, and inspiring others through her voice. She continued to practice diligently, never forgetting the journey that had brought her to this point. The hardships, the nights of uncertainty, and the courage it had taken to sing in front of the entire school. Every performance was a reminder of her resilience and the strength that had always been inside her. The principal continued to be a supportive presence, encouraging her to participate in school events, help organize performances, and mentor other students who were nervous about sharing their talents. Jasmine's experience became a story that the school shared with new students each year, a tale of courage, perseverance, and the power of believing in oneself. Her performance had left a lasting legacy, transforming not only her life but also the culture of the school. In interviews with local media, Jasmine spoke humbly about her journey. She emphasized the importance of perseverance, believing in oneself, and using talent not just for personal gain but to inspire others. Her story resonated with people far beyond her school and community. Messages of support, encouragement, and admiration poured in from strangers who had heard about her performance. Many shared their own stories of struggle, and Jasmine's courage became a symbol of hope for those facing challenges of their own. Through all of this, Jasmine remained grounded. She never forgot her roots, the challenges she had faced, or the people who had supported her along the way. She continued to help Malik, support her father, and contribute to her community. Her story was not just about fame or recognition. It was about using her voice, talent, and courage to make a positive impact in the lives of others. Over time, she also began to mentor younger students who felt shy, insecure, or afraid of being judged. She shared her own experiences, taught them how to build confidence, and encouraged them to explore their own talents. Jasmine understood how powerful it could be to face fear and take a risk, and she wanted others to experience the same transformation she had gone through. Her performances continued to receive acclaim, but for Jasmine, the most meaningful part was the connection she made with her audience. She realized that music was more than just sound. It was a bridge between hearts, a way to express emotions that could not be put into words. Each time she sang, she remembered the nights in the shelter, the challenges at home, and the moment she had decided to face her fear on stage. That memory fueled her passion and reminded her that she had come a long way from the quiet, invisible girl she once was. Jasmine's story eventually reached broader audiences through social media, local newspapers, and community programs. People were inspired not just by her talent, but by her resilience, courage, and kindness. She became a symbol of hope for others facing adversity, showing that no matter how difficult life may seem, determination, hard work, and courage can create extraordinary opportunities. Even years later, Jasmine would remember that first performance at Westwood High with clarity. It had been the moment when fear met courage, when doubt was replaced by confidence, and when her voice, long hidden in quiet corners, finally soared for the world to hear. It had been more than a song. It had been a declaration of who she was, a testament to her resilience and the beginning of a life filled with possibility and hope. Through her journey, Jasmine learned that talent alone was not enough. Courage, perseverance, and authenticity were equally important. She understood that life would continue to bring challenges, but she had proven to herself that she could rise above them. Her experience taught her the value of self-belief, the importance of support from loved ones, and the transformative power of sharing one's gifts with the world. By embracing her talent and facing her fears, Jasmine had created a life full of new opportunities, meaningful connections, and lasting inspiration. She had turned a moment that could have been humiliating into a triumph that would resonate far beyond the walls of her school. Her story remained a beacon of hope, showing that even in the face of adversity, courage and talent can shine through, touching lives and changing the world for the better.